Now, we all know that the carnivore diet is the proper human diet. So, why don't professional athletes eat only meat? Hey everybody, welcome back to Carnivore Quest. Larry here. I follow a guy on Instagram called Bucks County Batman, and he's this weightlifter who does cosplay and different like comical skits wearing a Batman outfit basically. I started following him. Some of his stuff was pretty funny. I caught him doing a live on Instagram, and he didn't have a whole lot of people watching, which is rare because he's got a lot of followers. I think there were like 30 people watching, and he was on a stationary bike. He was exercising, just answering questions about weightlifting. I mean, he's been working out since he said he was like 13 years old, and really knowledgeable. So I asked him, have you ever considered doing a carnivore diet? And once he got to my question, he responded, he actually looked into it, but he said if you think about it, none of the world's elite athletes eat a carnivore diet, and that really just got him not even looking at it anymore. And he said this was a while ago too, but the guy's in phenomenal shape, and it got me thinking, are there any professional athletes who eat a carnivore diet? And I looked up on Google, and I couldn't find any elites, top pro athletes who eat a carnivore diet. Now, you would think, all the billions and billions of dollars that are put into our professional athletes, especially here in America, they're going to find, what works. They got it down to a science. So I did a little digging to see what some of the most famous athletes in the world actually eats. But real quick, I got a little mental clarity trivia for you. While bananas contain the most carbs, which fruit has the least amount of carbs? Is it A, grapefruit, B, cranberries, C, watermelon, or D, strawberries? Let me know in the comments what your guess is, and I'll let you know here in a few minutes if you were right.
Cool.
So first I did a general Google search for what pro athletes actually eat, what their diets look like. And this first little bit of information came from MediaBank.com. It says, eat plenty of vegetables, legumes, and fruits. Eat plenty of cereals, including breads, rice, pasta, and noodles, preferably whole grain. Include lean meat, fish, poultry, or vegetarian alternatives, such as tofu or legumes, at both lunch and dinner daily.
Step back, I think I'm gonna vomit!
Include milk, yogurt, and cheeses, or alternatives such as soy milk. Drink plenty of water. Limit takeaway foods, cakes, soft drinks, and alcohol, as they contribute little in the way of important nutrients. There was a lot on that list that definitely wasn't on the carnivore diet. They did mention lean meats, but there's no, don't eat fatty meat, apparently. And of course, there was a ton of that stuff. Wasn't on the carnivore diet except maybe the water, stay away from alcohol and cakes. Well, yeah, that'll go along with the carnivore diet, but really most of that list wasn't what we would consider the proper human diet, right? There was one more website I checked out, and that was betterhealth.gov, and they basically said the same thing. Include a wide variety of foods like whole grain breads and cereal, vegetables, particularly leafy green varieties, fruits, lean meat, and low-fat dairy products to enhance long-term nutrition habits and behaviors, enable the athlete to achieve optimal body weight and body fat levels for performance. Again, it definitely doesn't sound like a carnivore diet to me. So I looked up a couple specific athletes. You all know who these guys are. But before we get to that, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Element. It doesn't matter what low-carb lifestyle you're enjoying, whether it's the ketogenic or the carnivore diets, it's extremely important to keep up with your electrolytes. Cassie and I really enjoy Element. They come in single-serving packets, and they got everything you need. 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. And we really dig the fact they got no sugar, no coloring, no fillers, no gluten, basically no BS. We usually use one packet a day, but if we're fasting or if we're exercising, we'll definitely bump it up to 2 to make sure we stay hydrated. If you haven't heard the news, Element brought back last year's seasonal flavor, chocolate caramel, and they made it a permanent staple. It's available now, and if you think the chocolate salt's good in your coffee, Buddy, try the chocolate caramel. As always, Element's offering our viewers a free sample pack with any Element order. That's 8 free single serving packets with any Element order. We love this offer for you guys because it's a great way to try all 8 flavors, see which ones you like before your next order. You can have Element delivered right to your home using our link below at drinkelement.com/carnivore quest. This is the perfect way to get the quality electrolytes you need and support our channel at the same time. So head on down to drinklmnt.com/carnivore quest and get yours today. And if top-notch customer service is important to you, Element's got you covered. If you're not happy with the product for any reason, keep it and receive a full refund. Thanks again, Element, for sponsoring today's video. And also a big thank you to each and every one of you who've used our Carnivore Quest link for your Element. Big deal to us. Thank you very much. I got 2 of the most famous athletes in the world lined up for you. We're going to check out, see what their diet was at the height of their career. The first one I got for you is Michael Jordan, arguably one of the most famous athletes to ever walk the earth. Michael Jordan, he was in his heyday when I was in high school. I was a huge Magic Johnson, Larry Bird fan when I was in high school and I played basketball. But I mean, you can't argue with MJ. He was awesome. So here's a look at what he would eat daily at the height of his career. For breakfast, he'd have a large bowl of oatmeal with strawberries, blueberries, and raisins, scrambled egg whites, glass of orange juice. For lunch, he'd have lean proteins like chicken breast or hamburger with a healthy carb, such as whole grain pasta or a baked potato and a green salad. For snacks, he would have shakes made with protein powder, juice, and fruit blended together. And for dinner, it said he ate whatever he wanted. Which, is surprising. Michael Jordan, genetic freak. He was amazing. But obviously, he didn't eat a carnivore diet. And man, you can't argue with the shape he was in, right? The second athlete we're going to take a look at is a UFC's Conor McGregor. Awesome fighter, one of the greatest of all time, one of the best talkers. He can talk some trash, man. I definitely like watching a Conor McGregor fight. Very entertaining.
Oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks good. God bless.
I would say he doesn't have the gas tank of a Nick or Nate Diaz, but he's in phenomenal shape, and here's what he eats. This comes from ESPN, McGregor's diet. His diet consists of lean sources of protein, chicken, fish, salmon, beef, eggs, good complex carbohydrates, good microelements, your herbs, basil, oregano. All these things are incorporated into the diet as a whole. A sample daily meal plan would look like this for McGregor. Breakfast, oats with eggs and sauteed green leafy vegetables. Morning snack, fruit and herb salad with organic honey. Lunch, chicken breast with rice and asparagus. Midday snack, a McGregor fast vanilla whey protein shake with nut butter. For dinner, Irish lamb stew with potatoes. And for an evening snack, homemade McGregor fast chocolate whey protein balls and organic tea. Again, doesn't sound like a carnivore diet. If anybody knows of any professional athletes who do eat a carnivore diet, let me know down in the comments. Because I wasn't able to find any. Now I know Dr. Baker, he holds, I believe, some rowing records, world records. And of course he eats a carnivore diet. Dr. Baker's in exceptional physical condition. I've also heard Joe Rogan say that he never feels better except when he's on the carnivore diet, except when he has real heavy workouts. He doesn't have the energy he has when he's incorporates carbs into his diet. Now, you guys know I'm not a fitness expert by any means. I'm not even to my goal weight yet, even though I've lost around 100 pounds. But, I was an athlete in high school and I grew up with a world-class athlete. My dad was the #1 cross-country desert racer in the world for a number of years. And I can tell you what he ate. You guys know I was close with my dad, and I've shown footage of him a couple times in our videos. And here's a cold opening I did, I don't know, about 6 months ago that shows Shows my pops.
My dad grew up in the Great Depression. Getting his first job at the age of 12, he bought his first motorcycle at 14, and after 20 years of racing, suffering 2 broken backs, dozens of broken ribs, and multiple concussions, he became a world champion.
The first vehicle in is a motorcycle ridden by Larry Berquist, who is so far ahead of the field that the officials can't believe it.
For 4 years, he was the fastest man alive in the open desert.
See any incidents out there? Any problems?
No.
Turn around this way for just a second.
Only one I ever see is Larry Berquist.
Yeah, they're up ahead of you still.
Yeah, we know. We can't keep up with that motorcycle.
He retired from racing the year I was born, but he continued riding until the day he died. I may be a little biased, but in the 20 years since his death, I've never met his equal when it comes to determination and integrity.
So what did my dad eat growing up? I'll let you know here in a second, but when I was born, my dad was 40 years old, and that's the year he retired from racing. But he rode his entire life. You know, I grew up in the desert. I grew up on a motorcycle, and my dad was pretty phenomenal. His hand strength, I've never met somebody with hands as strong as my dad. Now, I've seen him when I was like 9 years old. So at the time he was almost 50. He was like 49, 50. He could take a quarter and bend it with his bare hands. I've seen him do it probably 3 or 4 times. And my older brother, Steve, he had a jar because my brothers were a lot older than me. So they were actually kids while my dad was racing and he was in his prime. But he had a jar of quarters that my dad had bent. You know, he'd win a race, he'd bend a quarter for Steve, and he'd throw it in that jar. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid. I wish I still had that because my brothers passed on, but I never knew what happened to that jar. But yeah, his hand strength was unbelievable. My mom told me on one of their first getaways together while they were dating, she had gone to Las Vegas with my dad, and they were staying at the Sands Hotel and Casino. And my dad was there for the Mint 400. And they were sitting at a blackjack table. My mom said they were sitting on the end of the blackjack table, and the guy sitting in the middle was losing. He was getting drunk, and he reached across and he grabbed the dealer by the collar. It was a female dealer, and pulled her violently across the table. My mom said my dad grabbed the guy by the arm so violently, and he snapped his forearm. My mom heard it break. And the guy started rolling around on the ground screaming, "You broke my arm." And then, of course, back in those days, security beat the hell out of the guy and took him out of there. You know, I mean, this is, you know, probably in 1969, 1970, when my mom and dad were dating. So, you know, I was back when the mob was, you know, had more of a presence in Las Vegas. You know, now they just take you out in cuffs and call the police. But back then, you know, you acted up in a casino, you got rocked. But yeah, my mom said my dad actually broke the guy's arm with the strength of his hand. I couldn't believe his grip strength. I've never seen anything like it in person anyway. And, you know, cross-country desert racing is considered one of the most physically demanding sports in the world. If you look up, you know, what is the most physically demanding sport, soccer is usually number one, boxing's up there, and motocross. Depends on what list you're looking at. But cross-country desert's even more demanding than motocross. You know, my dad would ride 600-700 miles straight, and then his partner might finish the 350 miles of the race. So, you know, on the long races like the Baja 1000 so he was in tremendous physical condition. But, you know, what did my dad eat growing up? I got to tell you, he mainly ate meat. I mean, our dinners would consist of a large portion of meat, whatever that was, and he'd have a vegetable. And it wasn't typical where we'd have like rolls or bread, you know, with our dinner. I mean, once in a while, you know, maybe on a holiday. I rarely saw my dad through the week, the work week, eat breakfast. So he basically fasted. He drank black coffee. And I know he worked at the same place for 46 years as a photo engraver in Pasadena, California. There was a deli across the street that he pretty much, you know, got a sandwich from every day his entire life. You know, I mean, he started working at this place, I think when he was 17 years old, 16 or 17. and he retired from there. So these, and I've eaten there because I've been to his work, and they were, meat heavy, submarine sandwiches. And so that was his lunch. And then, like I said, he'd have a, heavy meat dinner with a vegetable. And as far as sugar goes, I rarely saw my dad consume any sugar. The holidays is really the only time I ever saw him consume sugar. He loved mincemeat pie, and he loved rhubarb pie during the holidays. And also, if you're on the West Coast, he loved See's candy. Every Christmas time, we'd always get a big box of See's candy. But that was it. I never saw my dad eat a candy bar. I can't remember. I don't think I've ever seen him eat a candy bar. The only time I ever saw him eat like breakfast cereal was like when he was retired and we would go camping. He'd have some Frosted Flakes. But he just, growing up in, his generation during the Depression, he just didn't eat a lot of junk food. And he told me they didn't have a lot of meat when he was a kid. And he loved it. He always said it. He thought it was the healthiest thing for you. When I turned about 10, 11 years old, we moved from the LA area up to the high desert. And he started a little farm. We had cows, so we had our own beef. We had pigs. And so he ate a meat heavy diet, and I'm pretty sure that's how he ate, if he was eating that way for the time he was, the time I was born to the time he passed away, I'm sure he ate the same way during the prime of his racing career. I never got to see him race. I got to follow him through the desert growing up, probably thousands of miles. I mean, I rode a lot behind my dad, never caught him. But yeah, he wasn't a big fan of sugar. And if I look back on it, I could say he was, probably like a ketovore. I mean, I guess you could say a hyper carnivore, right? 70% of his diet was meat, but it was probably more than that. And smoking cigarettes is what killed him. He developed throat cancer, but, in phenomenal shape. I remember my mom said, the very first time I saw Rocky IV in theaters with her, and the Russian called Rocky in the corner. He's all beat up. He says, he is like a piece of iron. And I remember after the movie, my mom and I were walking out, and she said, that's exactly what I said when I met your dad. He was like a piece of iron, just solid muscle, no body fat. So it's funny what things stick in your head, right? Anyway, I'm going to give you the answer to today's mental clarity trivia. Here it is. What fruit does have the least amount of carbs? Well, the answer was C, watermelon. And I do know a few carnivores who incorporate fruit once in a while. I'm not saying I ever will. I might once I reach my goal weight. Who doesn't like a good piece of watermelon in the summertime? When I looked that up, though, I actually thought the answer was going to be strawberries. And I was wrong. Again, guys, why isn't the carnivore diet used by professional athletes? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section on that. And, if you have a link or you can direct me to a video that would give me a good answer for it, it'd be really cool if you put that down there too. Now I'm going to exit you guys with something that's never been shown before publicly. This was made by the Trailblazers Hall of Fame for my dad. Right after he died, when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I've never shown this on the channel. It's never been seen publicly. I hope you guys enjoy it. You guys know I love my dad. Check this out. My dad was awesome, man. He rocked.
Larry Berquist was one of the greatest off-road motorcyclists of all time. He earned the name the Desert Fox because he was so fast in cross-country desert racing. Larry raced for over 25 years and is one of the winningest racers of all time in District 37, taking 32 checkered flags in the desert. Take a look at this picture and tell me what's missing. In case you didn't guess, this picture ought to help out. Berquist had a streak of 95 top 10 finishes in 106 races. 80 of those were victories in his class. And speaking of class, he did it all with style and a very humble attitude. One of the greatest honors was winning the prestigious AMA's National Sportsman of the Year Hare Scrambles Championship. That was 1968, the same year he won the Regional Sportsman of the Year 250cc Championship to pair with his national title. In fact, you could say the Desert Fox had his tail lit on fire that year. Look at all these wins. It was one of the greatest seasons ever in off-road history. One of the victories you might have seen roll by just a second ago was the Stardust 711 Off-Road Championship in Nevada. Larry won that race with his longtime partner, Gary Preston. Listen to what Hot Rod Magazine had to say about that impressive victory. Larry and Gary won the Stardust 711 by a stunning 1 hour and 48 minutes, which most surely has to be one of the largest margins in victory in the history of off-road racing. The 1968 Mexican 1000, now called the Baja 1000, earned the distinctive title of being the most famous race in the history of off-road racing. So how did Larry do in that most famous race? Larry and Gary won first overall. It was the first time in the history of the race that a motorcycle team had accomplished that feat. Not only that, but they shattered the previous motorcycle record by more than 8 hours. It was a record that would never be beaten. So they had to change the course to give someone else a shot at a new record. But there was one race that defined who Larry was better than all of his accomplishments. He was racing in the California-Nevada State Championships when he noticed his friend Roger Dietz was having trouble. It turns out that Roger was having convulsions and was in danger of swallowing his tongue and suffocating. So the Desert Fox broke off a piece of sagebrush. He used it to prevent Roger from choking to death until a rescue vehicle came and rushed him to the hospital. Then Larry calmly hopped back onto his bike and started racing again. At this point, he was about 50 minutes behind the nearest competitor. Amazingly, he won his class that day and finished 5th overall. But perhaps more amazingly than that was that whenever he would tell the story of the day he saved his friend's life, he always managed to leave out the part about winning the race. And that's who Larry Bergquist was. Larry won a total of 8 California and Nevada State Championships, 5 of them in different racing classes. It's a true testament to Larry's riding ability and his versatility on a motorcycle. Bergquist was invited to go to Spain and represent the USA in the International 6-Day Trials in 1968. After his racing days were over, Larry continued to ride the desert often until the age of 69. The Desert Fox had hundreds of great stories, from banditos destroying his bike with lead pipes to the time when he was nearly hit by an airplane landing on a strip in the middle of the racecourse. Larry Bergquist was an amazing rider and an amazing person. We are proud to welcome him into the Trailblazers Hall of Fame.